Hi, and welcome to What's Your Story? Today I have a fascinating guest for you. His name is Gary Winter, and Gary is an artist. Well, he's just an artist extraordinaire. He's done every kind of art imaginable, and I'm going to ask him about these because I know you're going to want to know. So this is Gary. Gary, thank you for being here today.
Thank
Gary
you.
Winter. It's such a pleasure to have you here. Now, I know you only moved to Vegas recently. You're from California.
Yeah, Northern California.
Pleasanton, is it?
Pleasanton, California is my hometown.
And you grew up there and lived there most all your life, right?
My whole life. I mean, it's a lot of years. Yeah, in Pleasanton. My great-grandfather helped found the town.
Found the town, wow.
And so I'm fourth generation to Pleasanton, California.
Yeah. Well, you're such an amazing artist, and I'm just fascinated by all the different kinds of art that you do and have done. And one of the things is the town of Pleasanton. And these are wonderful drawings that Gary did of the buildings in downtown Pleasanton. They're almost all over 100 years old, right?
They're over 120 years old, all of them, and I've done the whole main street. There's 30 different buildings.
Yeah, and then tell us about how you created these little, these are collectibles, right?
Yes, there's 300 collectors in town that collect. They have all of them. And I draw the picture first and do a rendering of the building and all that. I've always liked to draw, and especially architectural stuff and that. And in Pleasanton, there's just all these incredible buildings, so I would draw them. But I didn't want to put them on canvas. I wanted to find something. I've always tried to find something a little bit different. I didn't want to copy anybody. And so it came to me again. I mean, so I was, what can I do? And it's important to ask yourself and then be ready and listen, because so it came to me and said, why don't you put them on wood? So I make a copy of the art and reduce it down usually a little bit, quite a bit, and then take that copy and glue it onto the wood. And then cut the wood out and then paint the edges and stuff like that. So I have every building in Pleasanton and the whole valley rendered.
Wow.
In my archives, I have all these buildings.
Well, they're just fascinating. And I understand that you come out with a new one like every year, and people then add one to their collection every year, right?
Yeah.
That's amazing. It's amazing. And your company name is Imagine what?
No, it's Winter Design.
Oh, it's Winter Design. Okay.
Or
I know that on your card it said, Imagine You Can.
Well, that's my main key word or whatever, especially when I'm talking to kids or anybody, you know, because it's so important to pay attention to your thoughts. I've always been asked where I got such a crazy imagination, or how do you catch intuition, Mr. Winter? A little kid asked me one day, how do you catch intuition? And I never really thought about any of that.
Never thought you caught it, huh?
Yeah, you know, well, and so as I look back and I started getting that question more and more, I've gone, I do get inspired constantly, because years ago I took a meditation class, and I've learned, I've been meditating for 50 years, and it keeps you centered. So my mind's wide open, and if I ask a question, usually within the day, I'll get some kind of answer, whether somebody drops by or I pick up a newspaper, whatever, you know. So it's just so important to ask the question. And like I said, so I started putting them on wood. Started out with just a couple buildings, but picturing behind me in my shop, all the tables just full of the whole town. It took me a couple years to get the whole town, you know, drawn out and made and stuff like that.
Right.
But again, here we go into visualization. You got to visualize. What you see is what you get.
Yes, it is.
So.
Yes, and visualization is so important. Do you know that when I lived in Africa, I had the opportunity to interview Nelson Mandela, and he told me that he visualized walking free every day that he was in prison for that 27 years. He visualized it.
Right.
He saw it in his mind. And I figured if it's good enough for him, it's good enough for me. You know, if he could come out of there and have a whole country, you know, just change and be different because he visualized it. Well, certainly I can visualize what I want to bring about in my life, right?
Well, most people don't really even think about it or realize that you have a picture in your head. I can't draw any one of these buildings until I have a clear picture in my head. You know, I'll start with sketches, and then you start getting the clear picture, and it becomes. But people talk about praying and all that. When you pray, visualize. Okay, you can say any kind of prayer you want. The more important part of prayer is visualizing what you want, need, or whatever, right?
Yes.
You know, because a lot of times people are praying, saying, "Our Father who art in heaven," blah 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 blah, and they're just visualizing, you know, the problem and everything. So you just stay in that problem.
Yeah, but you need to visualize the solution.
You visualize
Right.
the solution, actually, absolutely.
Yeah.
Like, you know, like that Mandela did.
Yeah, that's amazing, amazing. Well, I mean, you're so talented. You've done these little buildings, but this is not all that you've done. I mean, you've done 2 pieces of art for presidents of the United States. And the fascinating thing is they're called nail art. Tell us what that is.
Well, yeah, nail. Again, I paint and do a lot of illustrations and stuff like that, but I have, growing up, as a little boy, I was always in the garage helping my dad or hanging out with my dad, and my dad taught me how to use tools,
yeah.
hand tools and stuff, you know, because this is, you know, 70 years back. And so he taught me how to use tools. And one day, I was there hanging at the bench and everything, and bugging him a little bit because he was into something. And so he picked up this bag of nails that he had over here, and he stuck it down in front of me with a hammer and shoved a hammer there. And he says, "Go over there and use your imagination," you know, because he was busy doing whatever. And over there was a bunch of wood and stuff. So I went over there and I used my imagination, you know. Again, because my mother would always tell me, I'd ask her a question, and she would say, she wouldn't answer the question. She'd say, "Gary, go use your imagination."
Gary, stop right there. This is a wonderful place to stop. We've got to take a break, and we'll be right back. So we're taking a break, and we'll be right back. Do you want to write a book, but you're not sure where to start? Well, what better time than now? You can learn how to plan, write, and launch your book in just 4 weeks. Writing and publishing a book can give you huge exposure, and when done right, will help you establish expertise and authority in your market. When it comes to creating and launching your book, it may be tempting to just dive into the world of writing and publishing, but this can leave you feeling scattered, uncertain of your message, and overwhelmed by your to-do list. This is why so many people give up and books go unpublished and stories go untold. Planning is the answer, and that's exactly what this e-course will help you do every step of the way. When you have a plan in place for how you'll write, publish, and market your book, the process is much more enjoyable and achievable. Go to my website now, JudyMoreo.com. That's JudyMoreo.com, and learn how. Welcome back. We're talking with Gary Winter, who's an amazing artist in all kinds of mediums. And so, Gary, you were talking about how your dad told you to use your imagination, and you did.
Yeah, he gave me a bag of nails, a small bag of nails and a hammer, and sent me off. And so I went over the corner and I took these nails and I pounded them into the wood. I was just tripping. I was like, you know, I don't know, 8 years old, 7 years old. And I made a tree. I made an oak tree because I love oak, especially oak trees. But and it's just a little one, you know. But I didn't pound the nails all the way in. I used them as like a silver line that made this tree. and you really can't mess up a tree.
You can't?
You know, well, there's branches going everywhere.
Yeah.
You know, so anyway, it was really cute, and I still have it somewhere. So every once in a while, even when I got older, I would make a nail art thing with a lot of nails and stuff. But I've done some big ones like Victorian houses and stuff like that. And one day I was watching the news back in 1981, I think. I was watching the news, and Reagan had just been inaugurated president, and they had bits and pieces of the inaugural ball on the TV, on the news. And again, this thought went through my head, and I couldn't even, it was such a strong thought. I stood up. My wife was sitting to my left. I stood up. I said, wow, I wonder how we could get invited to dinner with the President of the United States. That'd be so cool, man. I could dance with Nancy, and you could, and so you have to take your imagination and run with it, right? We'd only been married a year.
Did she think you'd lost it?
Yeah. So she still doesn't know me. But, so that's what started. And so I go, how can I get invited to dinner with the President of the United States? And that was in my head for a week or two. And I walked into a store, and they had all the magazines just come out, and there's Reagan on the cover of Newsweek magazine. And he's standing at a podium with the presidential seal on the front.
Yeah.
A year before, I had made a Morgan silver dollar out of nails for the bank president in town, and it hung behind his desk, you know,
Wow.
the Morgan silver dollar. And I saw the presidential seal made out of nail, you know, on the
Yeah,
on
in
the
your
stand.
mind you saw it.
And I went, whoa, I can make a presidential seal out of nails. He's never seen anything like that, and I'll just trade him for dinner. So I went down to the library and got the design, and it took me about a month, pounding the nails and everything. I had no idea how I was going to get it to him, but I didn't even worry about it. So I got it done. I went and had lunch with a friend of mine, and I showed him a picture, and just in conversation, you know, I said, if you want to get a hold of the President of the United States,
How would you do it?
how would you do that? And he was a reporter for the local newspaper, and a very, very creative guy, and knew everybody. He says, I had just interviewed Marilyn, or this lady anyway, and she's the head of the Republican Party for Alameda County, my county. And he had the number. He just interviewed her. So I called her up the next day and went in and saw her a couple of days later. I told her, you know, and I showed her the piece. I didn't say anything about dinner or anything like that. I just said, hey, you know, I made this for the president, right? And she asked me a bunch of questions, and then she picks up the phone right there in front of me and calls the White House.
Oh, wow.
And she says, Marilyn, you know the dinner we have scheduled next month? I found the perfect gift. I fell out of my chair.
Wow.
So I was invited to dinner, and now it hangs above his fireplace at the ranch, and which was in his day was known as the Western White House.
Yes, it was.
I put a note in there that went with the whole piece and everything. I said, I hope you find a neat place to hang this in the Oval Office. And when times get tough, all you have to do is look up and realize that if you keep on tapping, eventually a beautiful picture will arise.
Oh, wow.
And I knew it wasn't going to go in the Oval Office, but you got to
Yeah.
you got a hint.
Yeah.
But so I stuck that in there, and so I found out later that whenever anybody was at the ranch or saw that piece and they asked about it, he said, you got to keep on tapping if you want to, you know, and all that. So, you know, I went, whoa.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
So
That's
when
wonderful.
he passed, or just before he passed, they took that piece, or they opened the library in Simi Valley, and I was invited down to that, and they took the piece that hangs above his fireplace and gave it to the library in Simi Valley.
Amazing.
And then they asked me to make a second one to put back at the ranch.
Wow.
And you can see that if you go to Barbara Walters' Reagan Ranch interview.
Amazing.
And there's my piece hanging above the thing.
Oh, how exciting. That's wonderful.
It's a crazy
That's
story.
wonderful.
But, so.
Well, you have so many crazy stories. It's so fun to just be around you and to hear all the things you've done. Tell us about the furniture you used to make out of those tubes.
Well, again, I just gotten out of the Navy and came home. I was working for United Airlines because that's what you're supposed to do back in those days to get a job. And my dad worked at a big printing house. They printed frozen food boxes and stuff, you know, thousands of them. The presses were a block long, you know, big presses. So all their paper, gazillion pounds of paper, this big in diameter, would come on cardboard tubes.
Yes.
Like a toilet paper roll.
Right.
But these were massive, you know, and the tubes were 12-inch diameter.
Wow.
By 5 feet tall.
And they were very sturdy, I imagine.
Well, they were 1/4 inch, 3/8 inch thick laminated paper.
Yeah.
So it's like plywood.
Yeah.
You know, and he brought it, and so they'd throw these tubes away. He had the bins in the back. They would just throw these tubes away once they did paper. And my dad was a very creative guy, and he liked to make things, and always wanted to make $1 million bucks, and you know, like. And anyway, he brought a tube home one day, and I was on my own, living on my own. But he called me and my brother into the kitchen one day, and said, and had this tube sitting there, and he said, "What can we do with this, you know?" He'd always ask his sons, you know, and his daughters too, but what can we do? And so we're talking, you know, we do, I don't know, you know, and we didn't know how strong it was and all this and that. And he throws a pencil at me and he goes, "Gary, sketch it out. Sketch a tube out." You know, I was like 20-something years old, so I could sketch, but and then somebody, my brother or one of us, said, we could put a top on the tube, in plywood or something, put a top on it, cut the side out, and put another piece in there, and make a side table for my sister's bedroom. So he had me sketch it out, and he used to tell us all, but we've all got ideas. We're all coming up with ideas. But you've got, in order to capture that idea, you have to sketch it out. You've got to put it on paper.
Right.
Take a pencil and put it on paper. Once you've put it on paper, you've brought it out. It's almost like the first prototype visually, and then you can go from there. You start working it up. If you don't put it on paper, and that could be even like for a song, writing a song or writing a book or whatever, you got to write it out, sketch it out, and that is the beginning of it coming to life. And if you don't, then it just sits in your head and rattles around and drives you crazy, and nothing gets. All you do is think about it.
Right.
And that's not how you use your mind. You know, we got to teach kids how to use your mind, you know, because it's so powerful.
Yes, it is.
And
it is. And you've used yours for years, and your creativity is absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing. Now, to the audience, you see that we both have on a wonderful pin. I have the one that Gary gave me yesterday. I have it on, and Gary has his pin on. And Gary, tell us a little bit about this pin that you've designed and what it means and how people can get one. But tell us first about how it came about.
Well, a couple years back, maybe 5 years back, when things were just really getting crazy, I was walking down Main Street in Pleasanton. Main Street is like my meditation in the evenings. I would walk Main Street in the evenings and just, you know, and I was walking down Main Street, very concerned about our country and everything, and I'm thinking, what can I do? You know, people are just in hate. And all of a sudden, man, just my mother's voice came to me and said, "Gary, you've got to get people back to heart." And that's when I remembered that she used to always say, you know, think from your heart, because that's where intuition and inspiration comes from. And I went, whoa, everybody's so far from heart. So I'm walking down the street thinking about all this, you know, and I'm thinking, everybody's so far from heart. That's why they're mad, you know. And I had been making a little heart that I put on some of my pieces. So I took one of the hearts, just a wire heart, you know, that I sprayed red, or a piece of wire, and put it on my shirt, and people started asking me about it. So I would give them the message, you know, we got to get back to heart. You know, that's where intuition, inspiration resides. And everybody got it. I didn't have to explain any more, you know, further than that. I'm going, whoa, you know. So it's funny, I was going to bring it, but I forgot. But I have the original wire heart. So I have them made now, and they're gold pins. And in that whole inspiration conversation, I was told that you got to put 1 million of them out there. And that never bothered me. I've gone, okay, you know, they didn't give me any time limit or anything, but so that's what I'm about to do. You know, I kind of kicked back for the last couple of years, like everybody, with the pandemic and some other things, but now I am moving forward. We're past it, whatever, and.
So this, if we wear this will just remind us to think from the heart, to think with love, to be more aware.
Just acknowledge your heart. You know, again, people don't realize the power of the heart. And I'm not talking the pumping heart thing, you know. I'm talking about your soul, your center, you know. And again, because I've meditated for 50 years, I always tell people, learn how to meditate, man, you know. And it's all about being centered and all that. But everybody would say, well, I don't have time, I tried it, blah, 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 blah. And dealing with this heart pin, I realized that there's 3 simple steps to meditating, you know. Just, you have to catch yourself every day, especially when you're in stress or you're mad. But catch yourself and see what you're thinking about, you know. There's so much chatter and so much crap going through our heads that we don't even pay attention to. Because that's when I was taking the Mind Dynamics class, that was their main thing, was pay attention to your thoughts.
So what are the 3 steps that we need?
The 3 steps are acknowledge your heart. Just catch yourself one day and acknowledge your heart. Maybe you're sitting in traffic and it's all backed up and everything and you're just, catch yourself. Acknowledge your heart, place your hand on your heart, and then breathe. Take some deep breaths and appreciate everything around you, even the traffic, whatever, it doesn't matter. Appreciate, go to that mode. And your stress, or it'll center you. And maybe for a few minutes until you get back into the crap, but it's funny, I've watched this pin, how it changes people when they're standing there talking to me. Sometimes they'll ask me, or they'll mention that it's really cute or pretty or whatever. Other times they won't say anything, but they just keep looking at it, you know, looking at it. And when they walk away after we've talked or whatever, they're in a whole different mode. So this symbol is like a switch. And that's the least I can do. Or that's the least any of us can do, is to get people at least thinking about their heart, or you know, their spirit, their soul, and loving people, and how lucky we are. Because what you think is what you get.
Boy, it is true, isn't it?
That's what's his name? The comedian.
Which one?
What you think is what you get. It'll come to us in a minute.
I know who you're talking about.
Flip Wilson.
Flip Wilson, yes, that's exactly who
What
it
a
was.
smart guy, 50 years ago, man. What you think is what you
And
get.
speaking about thinking, I love this. I love this. I don't know if you guys could see this, but it's a can that's been turned into a little bug, and
It's a can't.
It's a can't. It's not a can. It's a can't. A cannot. A can't. And it's got a little tail and everything. And how did that come about, Gary?
Well, I give a lot of talks, especially with school kids and stuff like that, because back in the day when we were making furniture and everything, and shipping it all over the countryside out of the paper tubes. Once we started selling them and stuff, I got so excited. I didn't realize it, you know, you could make stuff and sell it, and you know, and so I got excited and I started talking to the schools, my cousins' classes and stuff, and say, you can make and do all this stuff. And I would tell them that, you know, the main thing in starting my conversation with them is never say can't. Because what you say is what you get. And can't's a 4-letter word. It's like, our brains are like a computer. So if you type in can't, then your mind is going to come back with every way you can't do something. So don't even go there. My kids know that. They, every once in a while they'll say can't or something, and if I'm standing there, they'll duck, because oh, I'm sorry, Dad. But anyway, I came up with this. I had this old crushed can, and I said, that's a can't. And I tell the kids, this is a can't.
I love it.
Throw it away. Don't go there, And I didn't realize it at the time, but as I look back, when I talk to the kids, a lot of the stuff would go right in one ear and out the other, which, we were all kids. But when I started using the little can't thing, they remembered it,
Yeah.
I'd be walking down Main Street sometime, and the little guy's coming down the street with his mom, or Mr. Winter, man, never say can't, or whatever like that. So
isn't that cool?
that's my story.
I absolutely, and you're sticking to it, right?
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. Well, Gary, can we tell my audience about where they can get one of these pens, because they might want one? Just look right in the camera and tell them.
Well, right now, you can get them through my website or email, but GaryAWinter.com.
GaryAWinter.com. We'll put it up on the screen as well.
and or my email. And in Pleasanton, there's a couple of stores there
that carry
them. Actually, Boulder City Company Store in Boulder City carries the Hearts pens.
Wonderful.
And
so anytime you're in Las Vegas, you can just run out to Boulder City Company Store.
Yeah.
This is a rendering you did of it, right?
Boulder City.
Yeah, that's what it looks like. So you can go out there and you can get your heart pen right then and there.
Yep.
Yeah.
Or I can mail you one like that.
Well, thank you so much for being here today. This has been really fun.
Thank you.
And I know that people are going to be fascinated with all the different ways that you do art. And we want them to go to your website and see, because, you're amazing. You are really amazing. I have art students that I teach, and I tell them all they can do it. They can do it. And a lot of them come in with this, like, well, my teacher threw my picture away in the 2nd grade, or my teacher didn't hang my picture up with the others. And then at 2nd grade, they got stuck, and they never go any further because somebody told them you can't do it. And they needed to throw the can away, right?
Right.
And so what's so important, and I hear you do it, is that you can do just about anything. You can make about anything. If you can imagine it, you can make it happen. And this is what I tell my students, and they turn out so good. And I'm so thrilled to hear you saying the same thing, because it just backs up my feeling of, it's not just me. You can do it. You can be creative.
We're all artists. We're all inventors. We're all very creative people, And it's just, again, you have to learn how to use your mind, and you have to ask yourself a question. What can I do? Mm-hmm. And then learn to meditate, learn to just, be centered for a few minutes.
Be quiet and wait for the answer.
And you don't have to meditate for 20 minutes. Just do it for 2 minutes every day and make it a habit. And pretty soon, you'll do it first thing in the morning, and it works.
Yes.
I've met presidents. I always wanted to fly the ridge on the hang glider. I didn't tell you, but the family had a ranch, and we used to go out there all the time. And as a kid, I would watch the hawks flying the ridge.
Yeah.
I would spend hours just watching the hawks, and after a while, I understood that they were riding the thermals, and they were riding the invisible wind coming in from the west, and all that. And so I just dreamt of. I could just feel like flying with those guys, and because I'm just a little guy, but watching that. And 10, 15 years later, when I got out of the Navy and was building the furniture, a friend of mine stopped by and had a hang glider on his roof that he had just made, and took me out to these local hills, and we learned how to fly, and I built my hang glider first. And this is like 1973. Hang gliders were brandy new, and nobody had even seen them. You thought you were crazy. But it took us 6 months in the sand dunes learning how to fly, crashing into the sand. We were only 10, 20 feet off the ground for a few minutes. And then, gradually we learned how to fly, to control it. And we went out to the ranch, and I'm standing at the top of the ridge looking down on where I used to sit as a kid, and didn't even think about it until I went, whoa. I used to sit down there and watch the hawks fly, and here I am.
Yeah.
I was the first to go off with my friends. There was 4 of us all together, and it's your ranch, Gary, and you're the one who wanted to do it. And I took off, and I'm at 1,800 feet going out over the creek. And then I turned right over the creek, and I'm following the creek and looking down on the cattle down below and everything. And off to my left, at my same height, I had an altimeter on, but at my same height comes this hawk.
Wow.
Out in front of me. He's 100 feet out in front of me, 150 feet out in front of me. And then he gets in front of me and he turns left, and I'm following this hawk back to the landing site.
So it just goes to show that if you can imagine it, you can do it, doesn't it?
Anything.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Thank you so much. Thank you for being here. And thank you for joining us today. We hope you'll come back for another one of our episodes and meet another of our really fascinating guests. Gary, it's been my pleasure.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you, thank you, thank you.